in Pietermaritzburg. As we get through this morning show, just looking to a conversation with regard to the State of the Nation address that's expected soon. Now, we know that it's not President Ramaphosa's first stand at the podium, so to speak, with the State of the Nation address, and we've discussed expectations prior to each one. We've always, sat down and said, okay, what do we think? What do we think the president's going to talk about? So President Ramaphosa faces a major test as South Africans look to his State of the Nation address to dispel fears and concerns over the Land Expropriation Act, tensions between Rwanda and Pretoria, and uncertainties surrounding the government of national unity. The actual address, set to be delivered today in Parliament, Cape Town, will provide Ramaphosa with a stage and a crucial prime time opportunity to address pressing national issues. Joining us this morning is COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator, Matthew Parks. Good morning and welcome back to the Breakfast Rush.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
COSATU has emphasized the need for a bold, decisive and progressive approach in this year's State of the Nation address. What specific commitments are you hoping to hear from President Ramaphosa today?
Well, first you must kind of reflect on progress since the last State of the Nation address, where we've managed to have improvements in the state and the economy. But I think also to respond to society, to acknowledge government hears their frustrations, to say how is government planning to address it. And I think first key is giving support to Eskom to ensure we have reliable and affordable electricity, to give more support to Transnet, which is key to unlocking the mining, manufacturing, agricultural sectors. Similarly to Metro Rail, which is key to transporting workers in our cities. Interventions to rebuild local government. Measures to ensure that we spend the infrastructure program. And whilst we do this to grow the economy, we need to really ramp up our public employment programs, and also a new mass industrial financing program as well. But I think the bottom line is we can't continue on the path. We need to do much better and do things much faster.
Now, given the many crises facing the country, rising unemployment, struggling SOEs, municipal failures, do you think government has the capacity to address them effectively, or are we beyond a quick fix?
Look, we don't have a choice. We've got to do things. There are areas of progress we've seen. We've seen good progress in fixing Eskom. We managed to overcome load shedding, albeit there is still fragility. We've seen progress in rebuilding the South African Revenue Service. But we need to kind of exploit these and see how to build upon them, but also to address our real blockages, in particular Transnet, Eskom, Metro Rail, local government. But we just don't have the luxury of time to continue on this very slow pace of reforms.
Indeed. Now, South Africa's unemployment rate stands at almost 42%, with 12 million people jobless. COSATU has called for a ramp-up in public employment programs. What reforms do you propose to make these programs more effective in creating permanent and decent jobs?
I think our concern has been that we have 12 million people unemployed. We're not reducing it at the pace we need to reduce it. We have a 70% youth unemployment rate. And despite this, we've seen government cutting back on the public employment programs. So I think for us is to see how to increase them to at least accommodate 1 million people by April, 2 million by November, but we need to go even far beyond that. We do need to overhaul the skills and training programs to make sure they receive the experience so they help them find permanent work. We've seen a good model with a presidential employment stimulus, which has hired 600,000 teaching assistants. That, I think, for us gives us a useful model. It pays them in a wage. People are exposed to real experience. And we should see how we can replicate that across the public sector and the private sector. But we also need the private sector too to come on board. There are lots of funds available through internships. They should be seeing how to tap into those. See how can they provide artisanship programs too. But if we don't do it, then we're going to be in serious trouble.
Now, COSATU has pushed for transforming the social relief of distress grant into a basic income grant linked to training and job creation. How would this work in practice and how should it be funded?
So the SOD grant has been quite a useful program, a relatively small price tag of 35 billion, but reaching about 8 million people. We do need to make sure everybody who's eligible for it does receive it. But we agree with government that you can't sustain 27 million people on social grants and 60 million people working. We need to be reversing those ratios. So I think for us, raise it to the food poverty line, but also enroll as participants in skills training programs, in employment programs, because I don't think anybody really wants to just receive a grant. People want to get the training, they want to find work, and we should be, working with the private sector too, to say, can you absorb some people through artisanship programs and so on. We should be also saying, how do you pool resources of the state to enable people to set their own SMEs? Can be a recycling company, can be as an emerging farm and so on. But I think for us, we have to treat unemployment as our single greatest crisis and really put everything towards it.
Absolutely. The state of Eskom, Transnet and other SOEs remains a major concern. What specific interventions does COSATU propose to rebuild these entities and ensure they support economic growth?
Eskom has done well in the past couple of years. There's been good progress by government to give debt relief to it and so on. But Eskom is not going to succeed if half of its customers don't pay. A couple of years ago, municipal debt owed to Eskom was about 40 billion rand. It's now 95 billion rand. It's likely to double again in a couple of years. So we really need to see how to move everybody towards prepaid. Everybody pays Eskom directly. It does mean you have to come with a new municipal funding model because many municipalities depend upon Eskom to fund their own programs. There has been some efforts by Treasury to address this, but even that, we've seen municipalities receive assistance and then abandon their commitments. So there is also a need to provide law enforcement support around corruption, cable theft, and so on. We need to be assisting Eskom to invest its own new generation capacity because many of its power stations are just simply too old and will continue to trip. And similarly with regards to Transnet, it does need a debt relief package. It does need to implement its planned reforms faster. We have seen some progress. But again, if you can get those two working, they both give you about 2% of GDP growth.
As a final question for this morning, this will be the first State of the Nation address delivered under the Government of National Unity. Are you anticipating the usual antics by opposition parties?
That's a good question. Some of the opposition parties are now having to transition to being part of a government and having to learn that life is not simply about, issuing insults and criticizing and insulting government. It's difficult work. We hope they can adjust. Those who remain in opposition, we're not sure, but we hope that people would focus on our problems as a country and not be distracted by petty politics. And our problems are really serious, and they require all of us to be a little bit mature and sober and really focus on dealing with them because the warning signs are great, and it's ultimately up to us to resolve them.
Absolutely. I want to thank you for your time this morning, Matthew. I know it's a very busy morning for all of you. I want to wish you a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you. You too.
So that was COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator, Matthew Parks, speaking on the State of the Nation address, whereby President Cyril Ramaphosa down in Cape Town at Parliament. We come up to 7 a.m. and got to get to your main news bulletin now with Tabile Duma. But most definitely, Nesmira Kasim, I'm going to be sitting back later on, listening to the radio just to hear what President Ramaphosa has to say. That's, if I'm not in front of a television set, watching him say it.
Absolutely. Let's hope that it is drama-free in 2025. And more so, whatever is delivered in speech is actually delivered on the ground. Now,
there should be, like most companies have this meeting where somebody will be taking notes and say, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and then before the next meeting begins with new business, they discuss the old business. We said we're going to do this.
Yes.
Did we do that?
Mm.
At some point in time, somebody needs to go back and say, "Hey, Uncle Cyril."
Look, I think when it comes to the aspect of load shedding, they've done a good job. Touch wood, read your Ayatul Kursi.
Right.
But it's been decent.
It's 7. Let's get to news.
The Breakfast Rush Main News Bulletin.
Making news at 7, eThekwini municipality has allocated 1